Inside what appears to be a blacksmith shop, a fire is roaring inside the forge. A blond man looks down, drooling, with a lustful expression on his face. He is holding a sword, hot, as if it just came out of the fire. Then, the man's expression changes to one of absolute madness. He opens his mouth and raises the sword higher up. He then bites down on the sword so hard that it breaks through the metal. Next, a father and his son stand before a giant portrait of someone, with the father telling his son, Arhan, a story he must hear, since he is a member of the Karavan family. The same story he had always heard from his father when he was young. He places his hand on Arhan's, and looking at a sword, he tells him that even if now they are living in this small village far from the capital, 200 years ago, their family's status was unmatched by any other. They had a knight, called the God of War, and righteous supervisors favored by the king and respected by everyone. Their family was chosen by the sword, and they produced swordmasters for generations. That is why everyone treated them with respect. They even named them the Invincible Protectors, Karavan. The father then places his hand on Arhan's shoulder and tells him that one day he will inherit his position and become the head of the Karavan family. This is why he must always live with the pride of the Karavan family flowing through his veins, to regain the family's glory and stand tall once more as the protector of this land. That is the duty that the Karavans must undertake. Next, the village can be seen from a wheat field. Arhan, all grown up now, while cutting some wheat with a scythe, thinks that the heroic tales of their family that his father used to tell him are probably just tall tales. He thinks that disgraced nobles clinging to their past glory is a pretty common thing. If the stories about Karavan were true, they wouldn't be living in this poor village as landlords. They wouldn't be spending time doing farm work with the tenants every day, he thinks, as he asks a commoner where to leave a stack of wheat. He then places it inside a carriage. While he's sweating, he also thinks there are so many holes in his father's story. The family's founder, the idolized figure in the portrait, would be one. No matter how much he looks at him, he doesn't resemble his father at all. Even the sword that's been passed down the family, it's way too sharp and intact for something made hundreds of years ago. And most damningly, not a single history book in the kingdom mentions the name of their alleged ancestor, Liam Karavan. In all his studies, Arhan couldn't find it even once. Considering all of that, there must only be one conclusion. They must be just tales, made up to give their descendants something to be proud of. Suddenly, a man calls out to Arhan, asking what he is doing standing there, zoning out. He calls for Arhan, saying it's time for their snack break, and another one tells him that if he doesn't hurry, all the warm bread will be gone. Joking, the older man tells him that if he comes later, he will eat it all, and Arhan tells him to wait and save some for him. After that, it seems that the old man starts coughing because of the laughter, while his wife smacks him on the back to help him. Even so, Arhan doesn't care that Karavan isn't a great family. He starts running towards the man, and says that in the end, everyone here welcomes him, and he loves this place where he can live with them. This is the Karavan he wants, just as it is now. Unfortunately, it looks like things aren't going the way we want most of the time. This was what Arhan thought he wanted, in his peaceful, complacent state. At the end of the day, Arhan gets on his horse and tells his subordinates that it looks like he has harvested enough for today, so he is going to the market in the neighboring town. He then tells them that he was thinking about picking up whatever they need while he is there. He then asks the younger man if Kun would want some apples, as he has been grumbling about not seeing any fruit for a while, and the man tells Arhan that it would be great if he could get some. Arhan then tells the woman that Marino's youngest daughter's birthday is coming up soon, so he will buy her a pretty doll if he sees one, and Marino asks him how he knew about that. Looking grateful, Arhan smiles, winks, and tells her that he knows everything. After all, he's going to be the next lord of that place. He then leaves, waving to the people, and they wave back, wishing Arhan a safe trip. He is loved among the people of the village. Left alone, the villagers start chatting, with the young man saying there is no one like their young master, and the older man telling him he is right, and that Arhan is so different from the other nobles. The young man then says that they should try to finish the rest of the work before it's too late. Just as he wants to say something about having a regular meeting with someone, blood splatters from a scratch that appeared out of nowhere on his face. In reality, it looks like someone has cut his head in half, clean off. Seeing this, the older woman is speechless. Just when his blood stains her face and clothes, she realizes. Then, more blood splatters to the ground. A man with long white hair and a golden sword says that this land must be erased. Two of the other villagers, petrified and sweating, can only look at the man. One of them manages to ask who he is. However, he just goes past them without saying anything. He simply keeps repeating what he said earlier, but it looks like the other villagers haven't escaped his wrath either. It didn't look like he even moved a muscle, but it's clear he was responsible for this. He then continues his walk towards the village. Later that night, Arhan returns, and when he sees the scene, he drops all the fruits and the toys. He starts crying, denying what is happening. He stands before the sea of corpses, asking what happened, asking why everyone is dead, as one man comes from behind, trying to grab him. In reality, he actually tries to cover his eyes, telling him not to look. This is Arhan's butler. Arhan starts saying that something must be wrong, as he is seeing things, and his butler is crying. He then starts explaining to Arhan what happened, how that man came, and said that the land of Karavan must be erased. It only took him 10 minutes. He wielded his sword with cold indifference. This man appeared without warning, and took the lives of half the villagers. Then, it looks like he also destroyed the village entirely. As he demolished everything, the man said that he was just following orders. Just like that, Butler says, half of Karavan fell and was erased, leaving no trace, all done by a single disaster, one lone swordmaster. Later, it looks like we are back at the estate. Inside, everyone has been murdered. Only Butler and Arhan remain standing, walking through a sea of corpses. Amidst the terrible, unexpected disaster, Arhan can only look at the bodies of his fallen friends. Eventually he sees something, scarring him. He sees a body without a head, blood splattered everywhere on the ground. With this, Arhan can't hold it back anymore and starts crying. Then, someone calls his name. It appears that his mother was the only one able to survive this massacre. A single glimpse of hope. She jumps into Arhan's arms, hugging him tight. Seeing that Arhan is safe, the woman starts crying, saying she is so happy to see him. Hearing this, Arhan clenches tighter as well. In that moment, the warmth of his mother's embrace brought a fleeting sense of relief. But then, Arhan realized the horrible truth. Behind his mother, Arhan can see his father. He is down on his knees, crying tears of blood, continuously asking himself why. But the truth of the matter is, the tragedy had only begun. It looks like, for some reason, the swordmaster who wiped out half of the Karavan territory in an instant didn't harm Arhan's parents, and only conveyed the following words instead. The man stated that he will be returning in a month. If they wish to leave, they should leave that place, and take everyone they care about with them. Arhan's father kept asking the same question, with tears flowing down his cheeks. He asks the swordmaster why them, what crime have they committed? However, the man does not care about such things. He turns his back, and without even turning his gaze, he says that he is simply following orders. After he left behind his incomprehensible words, one by one, the surviving villagers began to leave the village, taking whatever possessions they could. That might have been the only way to save lives, but their family wasn't even given that choice. Arhan's father was crushed by the weight of his responsibility and started reciting rubbish from some books, saying he was the great knight who hunts nightmares, the iron-blooded guardian who protects the kingdom. It was his solemn duty to behead the great evil that would soon come, and he swore to the heavens he would never yield. His helplessness as the Lord made it even harder for him to take any action. Later, Arhan's mother calls his name. She places her hands on Arhan's shoulders and tells him that he has instructed the butler to prepare a carriage. Arhan is to leave the territory with him and go as far away as possible. Hearing this, Arhan asks his mother what she is saying, as she and his father must also leave. His mother then explains that his father cannot leave this place, because until the very end, he will want to face the enemy as the Lord of Karavan, and as his partner, his mother says that he will be with him until the very end. Hearing this, Arhan starts crying, begging his mother to take his father and leave with him, but his mother has something else to say. The stories his father told him are not true. All of those tales of a righteous guardian, an invincible protector, all of those are nothing more than history filled with lies. Therefore, his mother only asks for one last promise. She asks Arhan to swear that he will never pick up a sword in his life, and that he will survive no matter what. Whatever happens, Arhan must live for himself. The butler then calls for his mother, saying that the carriage is ready. She asks the butler to take good care of Arhan, and make sure they get as far away as possible before that man comes. The butler complies, and with tears in his eyes he pulls Arhan away, while he screams for his mother. With quiet dignity, his mother closes her eyes and bows her head slightly. While this happens, the butler pulls Arhan away, saying that they must go as fast as possible. Arhan still tries to reach for his mother as he is being pulled away. With tears filling her eyes, looking after her son, she reiterates her love for Arhan. Back at the estate, a door opens slightly. Inside, Arhan's father is smashing his head against a bookshelf. Books are all over the floor. Blood has started flowing off his forehead, and drool can be seen falling from his mouth. Arhan's mother hugs him from behind and tells him not to suffer alone. If nothing else works out, she tells him that at least until the end, she will be at his side. Inside the forest, the butler is driving the carriage. He tells Arhan that even though he knows this is incredibly painful and devastating, he still must endure. He tells Arhan that the man who did this is a calamity, a natural disaster that humans like them cannot possibly overcome. They must accept this tragedy for what it is, and forget it if they want to go on living. He then turns his head and says that this would be the wish of his lord and lady. He wants to look Arhan in the eyes and tell him that he can still live on. When he notices that Arhan is not even in the carriage anymore, it looks like Arhan is running through the forest. No matter how he thinks about it, he cannot leave his own. How could he leave his parents like this? He cannot just run away by himself. Arhan thinks that they call him a calamity, but the swordmaster is still just a man, and just like him, he will die if an arrow pierces his heart. Arhan reveals that he has spent the last month preparing a deadly poison, so if he can shoot him with this, it will all be over. He will be able to protect them, he says, as he arrives back at the estate. Looking above, he remains stunned. Pure fear grips his heart. His father's head hangs tied to a spike. More specifically, it hangs from the flag on the tower of the estate. Sensing Arhan's presence, the swordmaster calls him a fool. Looking back, he asks Arhan if he has come to embrace his death after all. The swordmaster says that he has shown Arhan mercy, yet it looks like he doesn't want it. Arhan wants to say something, but words are not coming out. Torn between his father's head on a spike and his dead mother at his feet, he is speechless. He then goes mad with rage and pulls out the crossbow he's been carrying, screaming that he will kill the man. Just as he says this, the man remains completely still, unbothered by Arhan's declaration. However, Arhan doesn't even manage to shoot his crossbow. He stands before the man, and the difference in power is obvious. Arhan drops the crossbow, and as it touches the ground, the arrow flies away. He falls to his knees, and the swordmaster approaches. Arhan grabs his neck, unable to breathe. As he walks towards Arhan, the swordmaster says that he is not even 18 yet. He walks past him and tells Arhan to consider himself lucky, as he won't take his life today, so he can go and drown in his despair. He then tells Arhan that not a single trace of Karavan's will can remain on this continent, and if he dares to continue that bloodline, he will find them again and kill every single one of them. Karavan's fate should be to simply disappear like this. After the swordmaster leaves, Arhan manages to pull himself up from the ground. He takes his mother's corpse into his arms, calling himself utterly pathetic. Without being able to do anything, that was the day Arhan lost everything, or at least, so he thought. The ancestral sword in his home seems to be imbued with a powerful force. As Arhan looks up at it, the sword commands him to show some respect. A figure starts appearing before the painting of his ancestor. It's no one else but Liam Karavan, the one his father told him so many stories about, and he calls Arhan his descendant. A year has passed since that horrible event, and since Arhan buried them all on one corner of the estate. In that time, he prepared for his revenge. The pinnacle, currently hailed as the strongest sword on the continent, is a guardian who protects the kingdom's peace, a righteous sentinel who eradicates evil, a superhuman with the most brilliant talent, even among swordmasters. Carlos, wielder of the 10 swords, was the name of the man who took everything from Arhan. After that, everything became a question. Why did he kill his family? Who was behind this? What secrets does Karavan even hold? However, for Arhan, one thing is clear. The lives of all Karavan members who died in vain will never return. Looking at the sword on the wall, Arhan realizes there is still more to the story. Seeing the light emanate from the sword, he wonders if all these unsolved mysteries have driven him to madness. That is when Arhan finally sees it. The mana emanated by the sword. Liam Karavan appears before him, calling Arhan by name. Before seeing Liam, Arhan thought it was all a lie, but there he was, his ancestor from all the legends his father had told him about. As the rain droplets furiously strike the ground, Arhan realizes that he has heard about something like this before. For some reason, those who've suffered a severe mental shock often experience hallucinations. However, Arhan can't simply dismiss what's in front of him. Liam then tells Arhan that he senses him wavering. Looking down on Arhan, Liam asks him if he is afraid he has truly gone mad, or maybe it's the fact that an ancestor he dismissed as fantasy has appeared before him, leaving him utterly stunned. Arhan speaks to the figure, saying that if this situation isn't an illusion, but reality, he asks Liam if he truly is the founder of their family, the strongest swordmaster in history, Liam Karavan, that is. If he really is the person from his father's heroic tales, he asks Liam why he is only appearing before him now. He starts screaming at Liam, asking why now, why, after all this time. Liam, however, stands unbothered. Liam tells Arhan that he first needs to test him. He tells Arhan that revenge is an ordeal that shouldn't be started unless he's prepared to give up everything. And so, for the past year, he's been watching him every single day. Despite his pathetic, hopeless talent, which Arhan himself must recognize, his obsession to never let go of his sword, not even for a single day, and never, not even for a moment, has his faith wavered. Liam reiterates Arhan's question, why he's only appeared now, and says that the answer to that is simple. Liam has only appeared now because the hatred in his eyes has finally reached the depth he desired, but also because his own patience has reached its limit. The murderous intent within him wants to tear the one who brutally slaughtered his descendants and the people of his land to pieces. Throughout the history of this continent, there is a fact that has never been disproven. Only a swordmaster can kill another swordmaster. Liam extends his arm to Arhan and tells him that he knows this well, which is why he swings his sword with such stubbornness, vowing revenge, no doubt. But if he is going to do it on his own, Arhan could train for a lifetime and never reach him. A swordmaster is a transcendental existence, beyond the limits of humanity, a level of skill that even so-called geniuses can never hope to reach. And even among swordmasters, that man is a transcended being who stands far above the rest. Even in his time, Liam says, during the age of war, there were only a handful of warriors as skilled as he. No one in this generation can kill him, and as time passes, he will become even greater. Hearing this, Arhan thinks that he already knew full well how vast the gap between them is, but what Liam is saying is that it's beyond difficult, that it could be impossible. He cannot just stand by and watch the bastard who took everything from him become a hero. But from this moment on, Liam says that things will be different. That is because Liam is going to help him, so that he can become a sharper and stronger swordsman than him. And as a member of the Karavan family, Arhan has the authority to judge that murderer. There is only one path that a caravan can take. Liam tells Arhan to eat his sword, calling him a descendant of the steel-blooded. Inside the forge, the sparks from the fire reach the wall where spears are posted. Arhan has placed the sword inside the fire, heating it up. The Karavan bloodline is a mix of human and dwarven blood. Looking down at the sword, Arhan already knew what he must do. The heated metal calls for him. Liam tells Arhan that it all began with him, a half-dwarf. The physical traits of the dwarves may not be apparent, but within their blood is a special ability that is passed down to their descendants. The ability is the power to consume swords. By doing so, Arhan can make the memories and skills of the wielder his own. This is how the Karavan family has produced swordmasters for generations. The source of their power made them such a great family. Arhan thinks about everything Liam told him, how he can inherit power by devouring swords. It is well known that dwarves are friends of iron and fire, but he's never heard of such a bizarre ability. For Arhan, it all seems so absurd, and all these stories are confusing him further. However, he thinks, the truth can only be proven by results, and he doesn't have the luxury to hesitate. He turns towards Liam and asks him how he can consume the sword. Hearing this, Liam smiles. He tells Arhan that the method is simple. He just needs to heat the sword until the blade is soft enough. Then, Arhan must swallow it. Looking down at the blazing metal, Arhan thinks that maybe he is trapped in a nightmare, or maybe he's gone mad. Maybe he is being led astray by a mere phantom, but even so, if there's even a sliver of a chance, he will do it. Then he prepares to bite down on the sword, and so he does, making it shatter into pieces. The fire consumes him. This is a painful process. Arhan screams in pain. He then drops what is remaining of the sword. He grabs his neck as he is trying to swallow the hot metal. Then he falls to the ground. But this is not the end. The pain continues, but Arhan is not going to let himself be consumed by it. He instead remembers why he is going through this pain. Then he reaches for the sword again. He picks it up and takes another bite. As he swallows the sword, he says that whatever happens, whatever the cost, he will become a swordmaster. He will do everything necessary to kill that man. The next day, the sun seems to be shining across the land. Inside the blacksmith shop, a scream can be heard from Arhan. Waking up on the floor, he cannot believe he is still alive. Not only that, but he doesn't even have a single wound. He can still vividly recall the pain of chewing and swallowing that sword. Arhan says that he almost thought yesterday was a dream. Thankfully, that doesn't seem to be the case. If it had been, there would be no reason for only the hilt of the sword to be left. Arhan can then hear Liam's voice telling him that, at least, his mental fortitude is commendable. Unlike his hopelessly weak body, that is. Liam tells him that even among Arhan's ancestors, some couldn't withstand the searing pain, and more than a few gave up. Liam asks Arhan if he believes his story now, and tells him that all the legends about the caravans his father told him are true. Therefore, Liam is not just a mere hallucination of his. Arhan then kneels before Liam. He salutes him and says that he greets the progenitor. Liam then tells Arhan to call him master. All those who have received his teachings have done so before, and Liam says he understands. Arhan then asks Liam if all is true. Does that also mean he inherited Liam's great power? Last night, Liam mentioned that he could gain power simply by consuming swords. However, he doesn't feel like much has changed. Liam then tells him that it appears there has been a bit of a problem. To be precise, it's more of a problem on Arhan's side, not his. Hearing this, Arhan asks Liam what he means by that. Liam says that his original plan was to have Arhan eat his beloved sword and raise him to the level of a swordmaster. However, perhaps it's because his blood has thinned over the generations, and while Arhan still inherited the ability to consume swords, the ability to digest a sword's power contained within seems to have weakened considerably. To put it plainly, Liam says, in his current state, it's going to be impossible for Arhan to fully digest the essence of Liam's sword. Hearing this, Arhan remains speechless. Still, he remains kneeling before Liam. He then says he understands. Arhan tells Liam that if he says this is the case, then it must be true, and Liam asks if this is all Arhan has to say. Arhan tells Liam that he was already aware of his body's weakness, although he is disappointed with the results. He is simply grateful that another path remains for him, and Liam asks him what he means by that. Arhan explains his understanding of Liam's words, how he said that it was impossible for him in his current state, meaning that someday he will be able to handle his power. In other words, he should start with a sword he can handle. Therefore, that only means he needs to find one. Hearing this, Liam finds it interesting. He then tells Arhan that he already has the intuition of a swordmaster. Liam then tells Arhan that the more worn out and handled the sword, the better. Liam then tells Arhan to guide him to an area where old, shabby weapons are abundant. There, Liam will pick one for Arhan. Amidst a place full of rubble, Liam says that the place is gloomy, and that the necromancers would love it. Arhan tells Liam that all the old things from the slums are gathered there, from worthless scrap metal to unusable weapons. Arhan says that there is no more suitable place than this to seek a sword that meets Liam's conditions, and Liam says that it's a good start. He then tells Arhan that in the beginning, he too used to devour swords in places where the smell of blood was thick, swords clutched by dead soldiers, axes caked in mud and blood, spears with broken shafts rolling on the ground, and so on. With all his might, Liam ate and ate, all to grow stronger, and thus, survive. Somehow, this place reminds him of those times. To guard the sparks of life, they've clashed without end while increasingly getting fractured. Some died the same day, others lived to see tomorrow. Those days themselves were a battlefield. In the midst of those struggles, countless lives are inevitably extinguished without a trace, and yet a select few leave behind a dazzling single point of light. Liam then tells Arhan that he has found it. He points towards a sword and tells Arhan to take it. He tells Arhan that this is the sword he must devour next. 1 month later, it looks like some men have come to Arhan's estate, thinking that it's abandoned, saying that there is not a single person living there, or in the village. The men are walking the halls, saying that maybe a warlock used this mansion to experiment on living beings before, but his friend says he doubts it. As if that were the case, they would have died the moment they've stepped foot in this place. Most likely, another one says, there is a fallen noble hiding out there. One asks if this place doesn't reek of the smell of the rich to the others. One man says that their luck finally turned, saying that this job's gonna be a piece of cake, as if there isn't even a caretaker. Then that says it all. One of the guys then finds something inside a crate. He says that it looks like a noble's daughter really does live there. He takes out a handkerchief and says that there's a whole pile of fine ladies' clothes, freshly laundered. Smelling the piece of clothing, the man says that the scent on these clothes really is different. Hearing this, Another one says that if they play their cards right, they might also be able to have another kind of fun. Someone else then sees them and tells everyone to stop. A man steps out of the shadows. This is of course Arhan, telling the man that his mother liked things to be tidy, and that she truly hated it when her belongings were a mess. Therefore, the man should quietly put that down and have a conversation with Arhan. Seeing him, the men are not sure what to say. One of them asks who this kid could be, and says that maybe he is the son of the mansion's owner, while the tall, muscular one says that there is no woman. Arhan asks them if they came here to seek food or simply a place to stay. If it's one of those things, they should say it now. He is willing to accept them as guests, if it's for one of these reasons. Hearing this, one of the men asks Arhan what he is yapping about, and if he has lost his mind. The man then gets irritated with Arhan and says that nobles must have no common sense at all, and tells Arhan that he should have just stayed hidden quietly, asking why the hell he crawled out and made a fuss. Arhan looks the man in the eye, and then lets his gaze drop. The men then rage, attacking Arhan, asking him if he is so eager to die. Suddenly, Arhan raises his gaze. For a second his eyes change, with fire brimming around his face. In one swift motion, he drives his sword through the man's stomach. As the blade pierces the man, making him cough up blood, Arhan says that in the end, they were intruders. This is unfortunate for them, as he was only willing to accept guests. Later, the fire is burning in a fireplace. In front of it, sit Arhan and Liam, with Arhan wanting to ask his master something. He asks Liam if this is truly the sword he should eat. He says that this is less of a sword and more of a needle. Arhan says that he feels like this would just snap if he tried cutting anything with it, and asks Liam if he doesn't have the same view. Yet Liam says that this is expected. He tells Arhan that it was never meant for slashing your foes, nor is it for crushing them. Instead, it's a weapon forged for a single purpose. In a decisive battle, where life and death hang in the balance, it's meant to pierce through the enemy's vital points to end their life. Then, a woman is shown, piercing her enemy's neck. It's a sword that is meant to thrust, Liam says. Hearing this, Arhan can't believe it. For that purpose, he thinks, there would be a sturdier and more familiar weapon he could use, and Liam instantly realizes that Arhan's face says he thinks a spear would be better. Liam tells Arhan that the question he posed is not without merit. However, the memories dwelling within that sword are the most useful thing for his weak body. Liam tells Arhan that, before the death of its previous owner, she single-handedly did a lot of damage. That sword pierced the lives of over 2,000 enemies. All that, with a body even more slender than the one Arhan possesses, that of a woman. Liam tells Arhan that, given the circumstances, he should treat the sword with the respect it deserves, and consume it with gratitude. Arhan walks toward the forge, and Liam warns him that while the physical weight of the blade may be light, the life dwelling within it is immeasurably heavy and solemn. As Arhan pulls out the sword, Liam continues, noting that Arhan will have much to gain from the weapon, specifically from inheriting that woman's memories. The last thing the child remembered was a burning mansion. Her name was Mary, and she was now completely covered in bandages. When the young girl, barely 10 years old, opened her eyes, she realized many things had changed. Her parents had been reduced to unrecognizable ashes in the inferno. Upon hearing that she was the only one who had barely managed to survive, the child whispered softly to herself. Lying in a bed inside a monastery, she told her caretakers that she wished she had died alongside her parents. After losing everything in an instant, the child was sent to live in an orphanage that worshipped the goddess of fire. The day she learned this place considered fire to be a form of salvation, her spirit was dragged to rock bottom once again. She, who had lost everything to the flames, was now forced to live in a place that revered them. She realized she still hadn't escaped the fire, especially since she now bore an undesirable mark, a harsh scar that would forever remind her of the past. The days that followed were horribly peaceful. During prayer hour inside the church, a couple of children noticed her. One asked what was wrong with the side of her face, while another boy told him he had heard she had been cursed by the goddess. Two more kids joined in. A girl declared the scar was the mark of a curse, and another added that it grew more disgusting the longer they looked at it. The other children started calling her creepy, monstrous, disgusting, and horrible. The relentless bullying only made Mary want to die even more. Every day, she prayed for death to take her. She wanted to escape the fire that had consumed her face. This agonizing cycle continued until a fateful day arrived. The young girl stood holding a sword, gazing up at the moon. Her expression shifted, making her look almost happy. In retrospect, her swordsmanship was nothing but rough and crude, yet it possessed a certain beauty. She had been watching a man named Heckle. He was an old swordsman, a former wandering knight who had worked at the orphanage for a long time. Normally, no one would have even dared to say a single word to an old man with such a harsh, unforgiving face. However, Mary bravely walked up to him. As she approached, she asked the man how she could become like him. With all her heart, she told him that she wanted to learn. With this simple request, she took her very first step toward actually wanting to live. Looking down at her, Heckle remained silent for a moment. He then warned Mary that his art wouldn't be of much help in life, especially for a young girl like her. He cautioned that a blade would only end up hurting her, and urged her to go back inside. But Mary wasn't finished. She fiercely declared that if she could just learn his art, no fire in this world would ever scare her again. For a long moment, they stared at each other in absolute stillness. Later, the old man brought out a barrel filled with various swords. Heckle told Mary to choose one, promising that if she could so much as swing it properly, he would teach her. She asked if all she had to do was swing it. Heckle retorted, asking what else she thought she could possibly do with it. Reaching inside, Mary selected one of the thinner blades, one that resembled a large needle. Pointing the sword steadily toward Heckle, she declared that as long as she could fight back, she would become whatever she needed to be. A small smile crept onto her face, but Heckle's stern expression remained completely unreadable, not showing a smidge of emotion. The scene then shifts back to Arhan's estate. His first thrust is clearly successful. The struck man is thrown backwards and crashes heavily to the ground. The other three men stare at Arhan in terror, unable to believe what just happened. One of them shouts, "What the fuck is this?" While another stammers that it must be a sick joke. Arhan swings his sword, splattering blood across the ground, and casually remarks that he supposes there is no need for conversation at this point. Liam's ghost watches the scene unfold from a nearby doorway. He reflects that over the past month, he has taught his young descendant only one thing, a physical conditioning method to run for hours without tiring. He hadn't taught him a single sword technique, yet the fact that Arhan just executed such a perfect thrust means he must be actively digesting Mary's memories and skills. Liam decides to quietly watch and let his young descendant take his first true step as a warrior. As the intruder collapses onto his back on the floor, violently spitting up blood, Arhan realizes what just happened. The exact spot where he pierced the man is a vital area that can only be reached by precisely sliding the blade between the ribs to strike the lungs. Someone like Arhan, who has absolutely no skill or prior experience with a sword, could never perform such a flawlessly precise thrust. Yet there is only one reason why this was possible: the owner of the needle he consumed a month ago. Mary's memories and instincts have been taking root inside him ever since that day. Heckle had taught Mary many things: how to stand straight, how to properly hold a sword, how to fight, and, above all, how to survive. Although it wasn't a systematically established martial arts style, Heckle's swordsmanship contained the romance and freedom he had gained while living as a wandering knight. To a girl who lived in constant fear of fire, his art was beautiful beyond compare. As Mary trained more and more, she noticed that his style carried a quiet, underlying toughness. Smiling, she fondly called it Heckle's blade, and she loved it with all her heart. A few years later, an aged and visibly weakened Heckle lay in his bed, with Mary sitting dutifully by his side. He told her that the time would soon come when she must leave the orphanage. When that day arrived, he urged her to go out and experience the wider world. This piece of advice would be the final thing he left her, his ultimate lesson. As Heckle drew his final breath, Mary wept. He told her how glad he was that she had been a part of his journey, managing to croak out her name one last time. Remaining perfectly still in her chair, Mary tearfully thanked Heckle for everything, and prayed that he would rest in peace. Shortly after, just as Heckle had taught her, she left the orphanage and ventured out into the world. Before long, she made a name for herself as a fairly well-known mercenary. Perhaps it was because she wielded a peculiar sword as thin as a needle, or perhaps it was because she was a young woman, a true rarity in that bloody line of work. Whatever the reason, to the people she encountered, she became known simply as the Singing Gypsy. Snapping back to the present, Arhan realizes that this seamless integration of skills must be the digestion his master had spoken of. From the bloody ground, the fallen intruder begs Arhan to spare his life. However, Arhan coldly twirls the sword between his fingers. With a single merciless thrust, he strikes the man again, driving the blade straight through his head. Turning his cold, calculated gaze toward the remaining intruders, Arhan calmly states that he will put an end to this cleanly. Staring at the blood pooling on the ground, Arhan realizes that he has just claimed his first life. Yet, despite this being his first kill, he feels absolutely no emotion. His mind remains entirely focused on the harsh reality of the situation before him. He managed to find an opening only because his opponent severely underestimated him. But now that he is outnumbered, he knows he cannot rely on that same luck. The remaining intruders must realize this as well, he thinks. So why aren't they charging at him when they clearly have the numerical advantage? From behind, Liam's spirit speaks up, explaining that the men are terrified, and for good reason. The flawless movement Arhan just executed was simply not something a beginner could pull off. Liam continues, noting that while a moderate amount of fear helps one survive, excessive terror completely clouds a person's judgment. Fear, Liam explains, magnifies the enemy, tricking the mind into perceiving them as an overwhelmingly powerful entity. Right now, in the eyes of the intruders, Arhan likely appears as a bloodthirsty beast, or, at the very least, the terrifying embodiment of the sword itself. Realizing that Liam is right, Arhan decides he will not hesitate. With a single explosive leap, he closes the distance to his enemies. His eyes burning with murderous intent, he approaches the three remaining men, running on pure instinct. One of the men screams at Arhan to stay back. Desperately readying his weapon, he threatens to kill Arhan, though his chances of actually doing so are practically non-existent. The man swings wildly, but in a blur of motion, Arhan effortlessly dodges the attack and shifts seamlessly into a counter stance. The sight leaves the man paralyzed with terror. With a single devastating thrust of his needle-like sword, Arhan pierces the man's neck, sending a spray of warm blood splattering directly across his own face. In that fleeting moment, Arhan recalls one of Hekel's lessons to Mary. Because she was a woman not born with brute strength or boundless stamina, a drawn-out battle would never be in her favor. Without missing a beat, Arhan pivots to his second target. This man is just as terrified as the last, yet he still tries to strike. However, with another fluid leap, Arhan lands lightly on his feet right behind his opponents. He internalizes Hekel's teaching. He must secure the kill on the first or second strike. In one brutally swift motion, Arhan drives his blade right through the enemy's elbow. The unbearable pain instantly forces the man to collapse to the ground. Another of Hekel's lessons surfaces in Arhan's mind. The old man had told Mary not to obsess over the physical traits she lacked, but rather to make the ones she did possess truly shine. Her greatest strength was her natural flexibility, a body as agile as a dancer's. It allowed her to strike lethally from any posture and any imaginable angle. Mary executing a breathtaking leap high over an enemy's head, driving her sword straight down into the top of his skull, until the blade emerged from his mouth. Channeling this exact memory, Arhan mirrors the lethal maneuver perfectly, decisively ending his enemy's life. Now, only one person remains. The final intruder frantically pulls out a knife, pointing it with a trembling hand toward Arhan. Staring at Arhan, he cries out, calling him a murderous fiend, and desperately begs to know what kind of monster he is dealing with. Later that night, the scene shifts to a dark forest. Arhan is digging a hole while Liam stands quietly behind him. Liam asks Arhan if he has finally cast away his doubt. A heavy drop of sweat rolls down Arhan's cheek as he methodically buries the men he killed. Liam explains that if Arhan possesses the stamina to swing a sword all day without losing his breath, then a few untrained thugs are opponents he can easily handle on his own. He adds that a caravan only grows stronger when thrust into a life-or-death battle. Looking down at his hands, Arhan realizes that everything his master told him was absolutely true. His body had become as effortlessly flexible as a dancer's, instinctively reacting to the memories housed within the sword, and Mary's memories had grown exceptionally clear the moment the fight began. He now understands a fraction of what it was like for her to constantly fight against the world. This was exactly what his master had spoken of, the power of digestion, where a warrior grows stronger the more they understand the life and experiences within the blade. Liam then assures Arhan that, when it comes to the harsh reality of this world, he never lies. He makes a solemn promise. The days ahead will be agonizingly painful, a brutal series of trials where Arhan will wish he were dead, making the hardships of today feel like an absolute blessing. Even after delivering that grim warning, Liam asks if Arhan is still willing to walk this path. Clenching his fists, with renewed resolve, Arhan declares that if it means he will eventually be able to point his sword at Carlos's throat, he will walk down this path no matter how treacherous it becomes. By the next morning, however, Arhan seems far less certain of his bold midnight declaration. Gasping for breath, and desperately clinging to the sheer face of a cliff, with Liam hovering behind him. Arhan weakly asks if this is truly the right way. Clearly, Arhan had not expected his training to involve scaling an entire mountain just to reach a solitary tree at the top. Liam teases him, asking where the fierce fire in his eyes from last night went, and wondering aloud if his doubt has already returned, a comment that only makes Arhan sweat even more profusely. However, Liam then notes that this pragmatic hesitation is actually one of Arhan's inherent strengths, pointing out that he has always been that way, even as a young child. The path of a swordsman, Liam begins to explain, is broadly divided into 5 distinct stages. At the beginning of the path are the sword beginners. Among them, those with talent reach the realm of swordwalker. Those who establish themselves as strong and become the linchpin of the battlefield advance to swordrunner. The hero who can turn the tide of battle alone becomes a sword expert, and reigning above all other swordsmen, revered as a god itself, is the stage of achieving the mind sword, the swordmaster. Liam then asks Arhan to answer a question. Among these stages, where does he think he currently belongs? Arhan replies that he is sure Liam wants a bold answer, but he knows his own level well. The prerequisite to becoming a swordmaster is wielding mana, and to wield mana, he needs a vessel to store it, a second heart, the formation of a mana heart. Since he hasn't formed that heart yet, he believes he doesn't even qualify as a sword beginner. Liam praises him, noting that he is very self-aware. He confirms that Arhan hasn't even entered the path of the sword yet. He is a novice among novices. This current training is specifically designed to guide a novice like him onto the path of a beginner, so that he can finally form a mana heart. Hearing this, Arhan is left speechless. He turns toward Liam, screaming in disbelief, asking if he means he is going through all this life-threatening risk, climbing a mountain where he could actually die, just to form a basic mana heart. Arhan argues, telling Liam that he doesn't know how things were in his era, but nowadays, a person can simply drink an alchemical potion, or have a walker-level knight infuse them with mana to awaken their senses, and form a mana heart. Because of this, even noble ladies who have only learned basic swordsmanship for self-defense can easily form one. Frustrated, Arhan asks Liam why they bypass such an easy, established path. Why does he have to stick to this archaic, dangerous method? He simply doesn't understand. Liam explains that, just as Arhan said, the mere formation of a mana heart is not a difficult task, but it wouldn't be possible to just follow the modern norms for him. The blood of a caravan is imbued with the unyielding power of steel. Therefore, to wield that mighty power, an equally tough vessel is needed. An ordinary person's heart will never suffice, because the peak one can reach with a human heart is merely the peak of a human. If Arhan truly wishes to reach the legendary level of a swordmaster, there is only one thing he must possess: a heart that wouldn't be scratched even if it clashed against the entire world. A heart of steel, and there is only one way to forge it. Liam tells Arhan that to force his body to feel the absolute need for a mana heart on its own, he must intensely push himself to the very brink of death. Even among Liam's descendants, very few ever completed this training to the end. That is how painful and terrifying the process is. However, those who did endure it all the way to the end invariably became swordmasters. Liam then asks Arhan what he thinks about that, and whether it makes him feel a little more motivated. Reaching his hand higher up the cliff face, Arhan grunts that it makes him feel more than just a little motivated. Liam reiterates that he never lies when it comes to the sword, promising Arhan that the mana heart he will eventually create will be unlike anyone else's in the world. Later that night, in the Verdi region, everything is quiet. Inside a dimly lit tavern in the eastern village of Campbell, 2 patrons are talking. One asks his companion if he has heard the recent rumors about the village to the west, called Karavan. The other replies skeptically, asking if he means that creepy old ghost town where no one has been seen for a year, wondering why he would even bring it up. The first man leans in, explaining that a new rumor has been circulating lately. There is something currently residing in that western village. When his friend asks what it is, the man admits he has no idea, but whatever it is, it seems to be an incredibly dangerous being. He notes that all the ruffians who recently set foot there have never been heard from again. Some rumors claim that a monster wave the Northern Watch missed ended up sweeping through the village, while others insist that necromancers experimenting with dark magic have stationed themselves there. Despite the wildly different theories, they all share one grim conclusion: if you don't want to die, you must never enter the western village. Overhearing this conversation, a man seated alone at the bar stops sipping his drink. he slowly places his cup down, intrigued by the mention of a village where intruders are guaranteed to die. Picking up a cloth, he casually wipes a streak of blood off his mouth. A dark smirk crosses his face as he thinks to himself that this place will be absolutely perfect for him. Returning to Arhan's training, he reflects that ever since that fateful night, he began clinging to the cliff face using only his left hand. At the same time, he continued to deal with the uninvited guests infiltrating the mansion, fighting them off even on days when he was completely drained. Amidst the terrible muscle pain from his grueling physical conditioning, even on days when it was a struggle just to lift his arm, he pushed through with all his might, never missing a single day. Just like that, an entire month passed. Sitting alone in the forest and leaning his back against a tree, Arhan stares down at his left hand. He thinks to himself that, unfortunately, even after enduring that absurd training regimen, he still hasn't managed to form a mana heart. Even if he hasn't reached that milestone, he knows that a profound change is clearly taking place within him. The scene then shifts back inside the mansion, where a weapon is suddenly thrown directly at him, missing his eye by mere inches. As the battle unfolds, Arhan demonstrates exactly what that change is, noting that his senses have become incredibly sharp as he surges forward to kill his target. When the intruder readies another attack, Arhan realizes that it isn't just his 5 basic senses, like sight and hearing, that have heightened. His judgment and his ability to concentrate in high-stakes situations have also drastically improved. His overall awareness has reached a level completely incomparable to what it was before. Now, every time he wields the needle-like sword and focuses entirely on a single point for just a brief moment, he experiences a strange sensation. As he approaches his opponent, the world around him seems to slow down. He feels as though time has stopped for everyone except him. Exploiting this heightened perception, he easily dodges the enemy's attack once more and spots a fatal opening in the man's stance. In one blindingly swift motion, he pierces his opponent multiple times. Looking back on the person he used to be compared to the warrior he is now, Arhan realizes there is only one reason for this massive leap in ability. He can finally feel mana. The scene then transitions, showing Arhan standing back out on the weapon field. Arhan reflects that achieving such heightened senses before even forming a mana heart, or officially becoming a sword beginner, is truly exceptional. Of course, this is likely only possible thanks to the power of the needle, but it remains an astonishing feat. Calling out to Liam, Arhan wonders aloud just what kind of power he will possess when he finally reaches the next level. Liam lightly scolds him, stating that being impressed by something so trivial is the wrong mindset. Arhan still has a long way to go before he can shed the title of novice. However, he humors the question. Liam explains that once Arhan forms a mana heart, he will officially become a sword beginner and truly understand the depths of that power. Only then will he and the original owner of the needle be on equal footing. If he takes one more step forward, channeling the aura emitted from his mana heart, he will be able to exponentially enhance his physical abilities and construct a domain for offense and defense, officially reaching the realm of superhumans. The world calls this level a swordwalker, although it is merely the very next stage after a beginner. Liam notes that Arhan will realize the vast, insurmountable difference between the two the moment he faces one in combat. Liam asks if this answers his question, and Arhan nods in understanding. In that case, Arhan requests to ask one more thing. He states that if his newly sharpened senses are correct, the man who recently entered their territory and settled there is a swordwalker. This is, of course, the same dangerous man who was previously seen sitting at the tavern. Liam confirms Arhan's suspicion, warning him that this intruder is on a completely different level from all the rabble he has dealt with so far. He then bluntly asks what Arhan plans to do, pointing out that in his current state, he wouldn't last a single second in a direct clash. Arhan replies that for now, he plans to simply observe the situation and prepare for the worst. He admits he has no other choice. Liam suggests an alternative. Arhan could choose to abandon the territory altogether to avoid a fight he cannot possibly win. Arhan, however, firmly states that fleeing is not an option. Although the land has been abandoned for so long that it has become desolate beyond recognition, it is still the only place that holds the precious memories of everyone he cared about. Hearing this, Liam falls silent. As Arhan stares at the ground, Liam's voice breaks the quiet, urging him to become stronger. He explains that in this Iron Kingdom, only the strong get to dictate the answers. Even if Arhan's simple wish to protect his home seems like an impossible luxury, or pure greed right now, he must dwell on and ruminate over the intense emotions he feels. He must use them as the driving force to obtain what he desires. Arhan must feed on these trials and forge a heart as hard as steel so that he never has to lose anyone again. Sometime later, standing face to face with the deadly intruder who invaded his territory, Arhan wonders if he is able to stand his ground. The man snarls at Arhan, warning him not to even think about running away. But Arhan stands firm, showing no intention of fleeing. The man imbues his heavy sword with menacing mana, threatening that if Arhan even thinks about retreating or showing his back, he will be cut down on the spot. Arhan realizes that a deadly, unexpected trial has finally arrived. After the mysterious man set foot into the territory, observing him became a new part of Arhan's daily routine. What he learned during this process was clear. Even though the village was full of empty houses, the man acted as if every single one still had a rightful owner. He never touched even the smallest trinket, choosing instead to live a simple life relying solely on the belongings he had brought with him. His only other notable habits were losing himself in deep thought while watching the sunset every evening, or otherwise spending his time in quiet prayer. The conclusion Arhan reached was that this guest had to be a knight. Liam agrees, telling Arhan that this is the only reliable conclusion. He is a swordsman who has attained the formidable level of a swordwalker, yet he strictly adheres to a personal code and maintains his manners even when no one is watching. Liam adds that people so inflexible in their discipline are rarely found outside the knighthood. Hearing this, Arhan suggests that, in that case, the man might not be a bad first neighbor. Knights are, after all, individuals who uphold honor and pursue justice. Liam concedes that a knight is certainly better than the usual intruders, and while it is true that they pursue honor, he warns that it is dangerously misleading to call them inherently righteous beings. By its very nature, honor is highly subjective. You cannot simply assume that the honor they believe in and uphold is ultimately good for everyone. A knight's honor is defined by the person to whom they have sworn loyalty, the one who provides them with their livelihood and valuable riches. Ultimately, their sense of justice is dictated entirely by the will of their employer. Liam tells Arhan that he wants to teach him the true meaning of a knight once more. A knight, he explains, is merely a swordsman who uses honor as a pretext to exercise violence, an executioner who carries out efficient killings based on sword techniques passed down for generations. Because they are clad in expensive gear, they are simply enemies that are annoyingly difficult to kill. Liam reminds Arhan not to be blinded by the hollow ring of the word knight. Instead, he must observe and judge the true essence of the target himself. Liam then tells Arhan that doubt is his biggest weapon, because it is the most precious talent he possesses. Hearing this, Arhan looks up at Liam and asks why doubt is considered his talent. Liam explains that Arhan has been this way ever since he was a child. While he appeared to just quietly listen to the legends of Karavan, his father told him, on the inside, he was endlessly delving into the truth behind those stories. Even in recent situations where he might have lost himself, intoxicated by the sudden power he gained, he found the right answer by eliminating variables through his morbid sensitivity and sharp observation. Doubt, Liam continues, is a refusal to be swayed purely by what one sees and hears. It is the attitude of using every means, method, and endless thought to try to reach the absolute truth. Those who do not know doubt can never cross their limits. Therefore, Arhan must never lose that trait, for it is his greatest talent for surviving in this world. Hearing this, Arhan smirks and says that he understands. He promises to keep it in mind, thanks his master, and smoothly slips away from the tree where he had been hiding. Armed with everything he had been taught, Arhan never let down his guard regarding the strange man. After taking plenty of time to determine that the man at least wouldn't act like a common intruder, Arhan approached him slowly, very slowly, intending to simply invite him to be a neighbor. However, things took a vastly different turn than expected. Right now, the man is pointing his heavy sword directly at Arhan. The man bluntly states that he knows Arhan has been watching him this whole time, and warns him not to even think about running away. Sweating, Arhan simply points his needle-like blade toward the man, fully prepared to defend himself. The narrative then shifts back to portray the story of Mary, the singing gypsy. That alias was far more widely known than she originally thought. Thanks to her growing reputation, she received lucrative recruitment offers from well-known mercenary groups. Conversely, she was also frequently pestered by thugs who came looking for a fight after hearing rumors about her. In the midst of those bloody days, a certain thought occurred to her, just as she was piercing through another opponent. Perhaps she had evolved beyond the level of just a female mercenary using a peculiar sword. Perhaps she had truly become a formidable swordsman. But the moment that realization settled in, arrogance took root, and the consequences didn't take long to arrive. It seems that at some point, Mary encountered a knight who was simply too much for her to handle. He coldly asked her if she was the one they called the Singing Gypsy. Looking down at the defeated Mary, he mocked her, stating that it was indeed a fitting nickname for someone with such a feeble sword. He noted that she seemed overly proud of her own skills, but warned her not to flatter herself. He bluntly told Mary that if she were not a woman, things would be different. He would have crushed her like a bug and killed her on the spot. The only reason she survived that day was entirely thanks to the strict code of the Red Hawk Knights, who never took the lives of women or children. As he turned to leave, he told Mary to spend the rest of her life being grateful for their chivalry. That day, Mary felt an immeasurable, insurmountable wall between herself and that man, the towering wall called a knight. Later, she learned that the formidable stage he had reached was known as a swordwalker. In the memories Arhan digested, Mary was already far stronger than he is now. For her to have been defeated without even being able to lift a finger spoke volumes about that immeasurable gap in power. Snapping back to the present, Arhan stares at the man standing before him. As the night approaches, Arhan vividly feels an overwhelming sense of death, a crushing pressure far beyond the imminent danger he felt while clinging to the cliff. This intense fear must be the very catalyst needed to forge his heart, and he can clearly see why. He is witnessing the realm of a superhuman, a phenomenon only possible from the level of a swordwalker and above, mana spreading outside the body like glowing blood vessels, infusing raw will into both offense and defense. In a mere second, Arhan feels as though he is being cut all over just from the pressure. That is the terrifying path of the swordwalker. The man then asks Arhan why he has been watching him, deducing that Arhan must be the elusive figure from the rumors who has been attacking visitors. The knight warns that if Arhan cannot provide a valid reason, he will have no choice but to consider him an enemy, and demands an answer. Arhan calmly replies that he was simply trying to distinguish whether the man was a guest or an intruder. Finding this hard to believe, the knight demands that he be more specific. Arhan explains that he is a resident who was born and raised on this land. However, a year ago, while he was temporarily away, it was as if a necromancer had unleashed a beast. All his neighbors vanished, and the village fell to ruin. Since then, barbarians and vagrants have frequently invaded the territory, threatening the village and his own life, and he has dealt with them all by his own hand. While speaking, Arhan realizes there is no need to tell the man the entire truth. However, unlike the common thugs he had faced, this man is distinctly more powerful. So much so, that Arhan was certain he would die if he approached him carelessly. That is why he had been observing him from afar, trying to judge whether he was a threat or a potential ally. If the man proved to be a guest, Arhan planned to invite him to be a neighbor. If he was an intruder, Arhan would have had to devise a different plan for the territory. Hearing this, the knight asks if Arhan truly intended to oppose him, even knowing the massive difference in their skill levels. Arhan firmly replies that this land holds a lifetime of precious memories for him. It is simply too precious to abandon and flee. Hearing this, the man is left speechless. He lowers his gaze, softly repeating Arhan's words, "A precious place." His demeanor softening, he acknowledges that the young master has indeed gone through something incredibly difficult, assuring Arhan that he understands. The knight declares that it is now time for him to state his own position, as they need to understand each other's circumstances, if they are to be neighbors. He politely asks Arhan to lower his guard and his sword, promising that he will then sheathe his own weapon and share his story. However, Arhan remembers his master's harsh teachings. There is only one way to forge a heart of steel. He must endlessly push himself to the absolute brink of death, so that his very body begins to instinctively crave a mana heart. Remembering his ultimate motivation, Arhan refuses. He states that he cannot lower his weapon, as he doesn't fully trust the man yet, and needs his sword for at least a fraction of defense. The knight sighs, pointing out that if he truly intended to harm him, Arhan's meager sword would be entirely meaningless. In a standoff where both have drawn their blades, being the first to sheathe one's weapon would be a blemish on a knight's honor, and he is bound to uphold that honor. Arhan replies that he knows this perfectly well, but he still cannot back down. Kneeling in fear and giving in before a fight has even begun is something he swore he would never do again. The two remain locked in a long, silent stare. Observing Arhan, the man wonders, what is this boy? The youth looks delicate enough to pass for a girl, yet his entire body bears the marks of enduring grueling, relentless training. Though his frame seems flimsy, His balance is impeccable. It is clear he hasn't learned proper swordsmanship, or an orthodox style that pours everything into a single strike. At a generous estimate, he hasn't even moved past the level of a beginner. In other words, he poses not even the slightest threat. The boy must know this himself, and yet the man sees something in Arhan's eyes, a resolve he has never encountered before. The man readies his attack, drawing a deep breath and steadying his blade. He thinks to himself that a half-hearted response simply won't do. In an instant, the man spots an opening and leaps forward, prepared to strike. He decides to target Arhan's wrist, intending to disarm him quickly to avoid causing any serious injury. However, as he closes the distance, a light ignites within Arhan's eyes. The boy manages to dodge even before the man can get close enough to land a blow. Looking back, the man cannot believe his eyes. His sword was actually deflected by a boy who hadn't even reached the rank of beginner. Furthermore, Arhan managed to put significant distance between them in a single breath. All around them, the surrounding mana begins to surge like crashing waves. The man realized that in a mere split second, an abnormal mana heart was formed inside Arhan. Even with this development, deflecting a veteran's blade should still be impossible, yet the boy has achieved it. He concludes that it must be due to the nature of this new mana heart. While a typical heart is soft and flexible, Arhan's is stunningly rigid and solid, like tempered steel. Looking at the boy, the man realizes he can no longer be certain of anything, save for one thing. Arhan's sword is coming, and it carries the boy's entire being, a desperate stake on his very life. Arhan takes another deep breath, his lungs burning. He knows that blocking the knight's sword just now had nothing to do with skill. It was nothing more than a fluke. From the start, the knight had no intention of hurting him, aiming only for his wrists to avoid vital points with minimal force. That was the only reason Arhan had been able to deflect the strike. By predicting the trajectory and thrusting the tip of the needle into the gap to block the blow, he performed a miracle, but the price was steep. The impact felt like colliding head-on with a speeding carriage. Agony ravages his entire body, as if every bone has been shattered, serving as a brutal reminder of the despairing gap in power. However, amidst the pain, the thing he longed for so desperately has finally awakened, a mana heart, the heart of steel. Even so, he is still only a beginner, and a standard thrust will never reach his opponent. He realizes there is only one way forward. He must forge a path of his own as the possessor of the heart of steel and the needle, using Mary's memories as his stepping stone. He recalls the day she collapsed before the overwhelming wall of a swordwalker, facing an immeasurable limit head-on. In that moment, as her body trembled with fear, the first thing that came to her mind was Hekel's voice. He remembered Hekel's final lessons. Hekel had told Mary never to forget that while most swordsmen see a wall and consider it an impassable limit, that is merely an excuse for those who lack the courage to clash and choose to settle instead. Walls exist solely to be overcome. The fear felt before them is simply the fate of one who holds a sword, nothing more than a stepping stone to reach greater heights. Mary knew she must not look away. She had to stand tall and face the obstacle head-on. That is why she raised her broken sword to face the enemy, the same knight who has now returned to claim her life. She knew she would surely be cut and torn apart miserably, time and time again, falling to her knees in helplessness. But she believed that if she didn't give up and continued to strike against the wall, her sword would eventually surpass that limit. Now, Arhan must believe in himself with that same ferocity. All that is left is to do it. Thank you for watching. See you next time.